All right, hey y'all, welcome back, and welcome to our module during which we will tackle um, the classes of disorders that involve dysregulated mood states, the depressive and bipolar and related disorders classes. Bipolar comes first in the DSM-5 TR and is followed by the depressive disorders. I wanted to create a sort of overarching video at the very beginning of this module because my colleagues and I have found that it is often the case that students come to this unit, this module, and feel surprised by how much they struggle, by how much difficulty they have with grasping, taking in all the detail, and applying it to first assignments in this course, and then the work that they're doing in subsequent courses, and then on into their experiential learning opportunities like practicum and internship. And this may be related to, and probably is related to, just basic expectations of people coming into this class. And it's no wonder, because our collective consciousness is flooded with often oversimplified, often incorrect depictions of mood and mood disorders. Ingersoll's description in the psychopharmacological text of the ethical conundrums with advertising antidepressant medications directly to consumers illuminates at least one possible explanation. It's also true that with these classes of disorders come a number of perhaps misleading or confusing vocabulary words, like what does it mean to be bipolar? What is this phenomenon of rapid cycling? And what is this hypo prefix associated with manic episodes in bipolar disorder? And why isn't it associated with depressed mood? We'll get into that in just a second. It is important to keep in mind, okay, as you are going through the process of this course and into practice, that emotional dysregulation does not equate to mood dysregulation, all right? This is especially true in children. If a person is dealing with difficulty with regulating emotion, it may be a manifestation or expression of a wide range of psychopathology, whereas dysregulated mood and the dysregulated emotions within those mood states are specifically defined in terms of frequency, intensity, and duration in the DSM. So, to, I think, really set the framework for this unit, I think it's important for us to essentially define clinical understandings of mood states. And we'll start with what is sort of our general understanding of a healthy mood state. I will start with, well, first of all, we will try to depict this in very rudimentary sort of diagrammatic form. So this line here in the middle of our board is intended to represent sort of a basic, general, healthy mood state, okay? And I think a helpful metaphor for understanding this phenomenon is comparing it to weather. So, and meteorology in general. So think of the changes in a person's emotional experience and expression as a person's weather, okay? Noting that yeah, the clouds roll in, the clouds roll out for all of us. We have sunny days, we have rainy days. And those states, those emotional experiences come in response to a wide variety of environmental stimuli and events, ranging from I burned my toast to my parent has died. And so it is within expected and normal sort of ranges of emotion to feel upset, sad, even severely sad or depressed when certain things happen, okay? And so a person may have a reasonably regulated sort of mood even if their emotional states go up and down, right? So this is intended to represent what is a normal, healthy, expected mood experience for most of us, right? Most of us can remain open, flexible, and kind, even as we range from feeling happy, maybe even elated, to sad, depressed, angry, afraid, all kinds of things like that. Now, clinical problems, in other words, pathology, psychopathology, produces dysregulation in these mood states, okay? So, there are essentially 4 defined pathological mood states, okay? The first is majorly depressed mood, okay? I want to just put some tick marks here. Okay, I'll explain what those tick marks mean in just a second. All right, so we have majorly depressed mood, all right? We have dysthymic mood, all right? We also have, on the other end of the spectrum, which you may have heard of as being defined as manic mood. Okay, again, we'll do some tick marks. And we have hypomanic mood. Okay. All right, so we have manic mood, hypomanic mood, we'll call this healthy / well-regulated mood. We have dysthymic mood, and we have depressed, majorly depressed. Okay, all right. So again, we'll do some tick marks here with hypomanic. Okay, now, even within these, okay, so you see that a healthy, well-regulated mood has its ups and downs, right? This type of thing, the regulation can be represented by sort of dips, right? And even a well-regulated mood can dip pretty low into sort of major depressive symptoms, but still then come back up and then even out, okay? It may also dip here and stay It can also dip here and stay. Okay, and we'll get into what happens if it goes super long like that. But what I want to make sure we cover very clearly at the beginning here is that depressed mood states typically encompass at least 5 of 9 identified criteria, okay? These criteria include depressed mood, so sad, perhaps irritable, especially in children, or markedly diminished interest. Okay, so you might, for example, let's say you are one of your hobbies is running. Okay, I'm just drawing from my own experience. When your hobbies is running, and you discover sort of a just loss of interest in participating in that activity. Now that loss of interest over a couple days, especially as it returns back to being interested in an activity again, is part of the healthy, well-regulated expectations for mood, okay? Excuse me here, I need to adjust this camera to include the top of my board here. Now, if you are meeting 5 or more of these 9 criteria, with at least one of those criteria being depressed mood and or loss of interest, and those criteria are met for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 2 weeks. Okay. Then you meet criteria for a major depressive episode, and you meet criteria for major depressive disorder. Okay. But without this duration, you do not meet criteria for major depressive disorder. Okay. You might meet criteria for persistent depressive disorder, which we'll get into in just a second, but it's very important that it is possible to feel depressed and still have a healthy expected mood state as a human being, okay? So, again, 5 of 9 criteria must be met. Depressed mood and or markedly diminished interest must be one of the 5. Depressed mood may be present as irritability in children and adolescents, okay? And it must last at least 2 weeks to meet diagnostic criteria, okay? Now, depressive disorders they are episodic. They can be single episode or recurrent episodes, okay? And you are required to specify, not only is this a single or recurrent episodic version of the disorder, but also which sort of mood state are we currently in. So it could be in remission, could be in partial remission, could be, and that's sort of the, or it could be that a person is going through a major depressive episode at the moment. And these are all specifiers that will have different coding procedures according to the DSM. Okay, so again, a lot of detail, and we haven't even gotten to the other 3 mood states. I think I may have mentioned this already, but the specifiers have different codes, all right? Now, that's sort of an overview of depressed mood, a major depressive disorder, and a major depressive episode. Now, dysthymia, or a dysthymic mood, okay, in DSM-5 is associated with a disorder named persistent depressive disorder. This is a combination of chronic depression and dysthymia that were essentially separate disorders in previous editions of DSM-4, DSM-4-TR. That was updated as DSM-5 in 2013 and has continued into DSM-5-TR as of this year. Now, dysthymia includes depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, for, in adults, 2 years. Okay? And during that 2-year period in adults, I should also say 1 year in children and adolescents. Okay? For our purposes, there's the definition of adolescent is not a slam dunk, right? In our common discourse, we think of maybe an adolescent as someone from the ages of 12 to 18, but you could argue neurologically, a person who's 25 is just emerging from adolescence. Sometimes people emerge later, sometimes people emerge earlier into adulthood. But for our purposes, we're thinking about adolescence as being something, a legally defined adolescent, around age 12 to around age 18, okay? So I get that is somewhat arbitrary, okay? And this illuminates sort of the need for a development of an art of attuning to your client's developmental stage and applying a accurate diagnosis based on the individual client. So it's possible for someone who's 23 to meet criteria for dysthymia but not have necessarily had a 2-year period of dysthymic mood. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, the qualifying symptoms for dysthymia are fewer and milder, okay? So there must be 2 of 6 criteria met for that 2-year period, and during that 2-year period, or 1 year, depending on the developmental stage, there must not have been relief of those symptoms for more than 2 months during that period, that 2 to 1 year period of dysregulated mood. It's also possible for a major depressive episode to last 2 or more years, okay? And then you also can qualify for persistent depressive disorder, all right? So, again, a lot of detail to keep in mind and to apply to your diagnostic process. And we've just covered the depressive range of mood disorders. Now, let's cover the other side of things. So, the sort of mirror of depressed episode would be a manic episode, okay? But it's not as simple as calling it sort of a mirror, right? This is related to the reality that sort of a manic episode or manic mood, which is defined as sort of elevated, expansive, or irritable mood. So key features of a manic state include sort of grandiosity, the lack of need for sleep, elevated energy, faster pace of speech, sort of sometimes flight of ideas, just big and energetic, goal-oriented activity. This kind of mood state puts a lot of stress on the physical body, okay? And the body cannot sustain this type of elevation in a chronic way, typically without causing serious risk to a person's life. The duration of a manic episode, the manic mood is still an episodic mood, like depression, a depressive mood, but unlike dysthymic mood, okay? There must be 3 of 7 symptoms met. 4 of those 7 must be met if the mood is only irritable, okay? And they must persist most of the day, nearly every day, for 7 days or more. So, a person may be going along about their day, their life, and then they have the big up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The expansive mood lasts for 7 days, and then they may come back down, okay? Now keep in mind that if the symptoms of a manic episode are severe enough to require hospitalization to maintain safety and to stabilize the emotional expression and behavior of the client, then duration kind of goes out the window. Any duration of a manic episode, if it requires hospitalization, meets criteria for a manic episode, and thus what is essentially bipolar 1 disorder. Okay. So again, a lot of detail, a lot of things to pay attention to. If a person has at least one manic episode, they meet criteria, as I just referenced, for bipolar 1 disorder. This is very important to remember that no depressive episode is necessary to meet criteria for bipolar 1, just a manic episode. All right. So previous conceptualizations of bipolar disorder, you may have heard it called sort of manic depressive disorder. This was a previous description in previous editions of the DSM, included sort of a depressive episode as well. That is not the case currently. So bipolar essentially is recognizing that people kind of end up at the upper expansive elevated extreme or pole of mood, and they have a second less expansive sort of experience of mood or pole. That pole could be in the more well-regulated sort of range, or it could dip down into sort of a manifestation of a depressive episode and have more severe impact on day-to-day functioning. So it is important to note that bipolar 1 does require, to meet criteria, there is the requirement that social, occupational, and other important areas of function, psychological, activities of daily living, those types of relational, that functioning is significantly impaired in bipolar 1. Okay? Now, let's talk about a hypomanic episode. Okay? So, criteria are the same for a hypomanic episode except for, so there is expansive, elevated mood, lack of need for sleep, increased pace of speech, more energy. Just like with bipolar disorder, there may be elevated risk-taking behavior. There could be, that shows up oftentimes as indiscriminate spending, indiscriminate sexual expressions. What I mean by that is sort of having multiple sexual partners when you don't intend to have multiple sexual partners. Puts the body and mind at risk of harm. So 3 of the 7 symptoms must be met, 4 if the mood is only irritable, and must persist most of the day, nearly every day, for 4 to 6 days. So there is, in a hypomanic episode, the duration 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 6 is in this range. If it goes beyond 6 days, it's considered a manic episode. Okay, so it's also important to note that in a hypomanic episode, functioning is not as severely impacted. So people that are dealing with hypomania can go to work. They can take care of their children. They can take care of themselves and bathe and feed themselves. The impact on their functioning is not so severe that they can't go on about their day-to-day lives, which is different than manic episodes. So hypomanic episode is less severe, but the criteria are essentially the same. Hopefully that makes sense. But again, it's complicated. So, diagnostic accuracy, as you can tell here, is very important for determining and guiding treatment, especially for clients with still developing brains, okay? One of the things that many clinicians, myself included, find very frustrating is when a child presents to you for counseling, for therapy, and a parent or another adult caregiver notes sort of big swings in emotional expression and maybe even mood states, but names it as bipolar, which comes with a certain level of severity and duration without those criteria being met. That's very important insofar as at minimum, okay, bipolar disorder indicates that there is likely going to be a need for medication along with psychological intervention, and the medications associated with alleviating and helping to regulate the symptoms of bipolar disorder have profound effects on the neurological system, have side effects, and can have important impacts on developing brains, all right? And so, again, diagnostic accuracy is super important for the safety and supportive development of your clients, especially when it comes to children. This idea that a child could have big emotional swings, even in a rapid way, okay, does not necessarily meet criteria for bipolar disorder, okay, or rapid cycling. Okay? Pay close attention to this idea of rapid cycling, because it's easy to step into this trap of thinking that a person goes from manic to depressive within a matter of days, right? Or even a matter of just a short period of time. That's not what it's getting at, okay? Rapid cycling involves meeting criteria for a manic and or hypomanic episode, and then returning to either baseline or meeting criteria for a depressive episode 4 times over a 12-month period, okay? So they still have to meet the 1 week, 6 day, or 2 week duration criteria, okay? But they have multiple episodes, at least 4 differing episodes throughout the course of 12 months, okay? That is very different than just bigger emotional expression, which is quite typical for children, especially those who are living in difficult circumstances. So that's a lot of an information dump for you to consider. We will be looking at especially sort of key differences in the depressive disorders, because there is a wider range of disorders in that class, including a couple of new designations, including such as disruptive mood dysregulation disorder and premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is very controversial. So I look forward to supporting your process as you sort through all these details in the discussion board. Yeah, I look forward to talking with you about other parts of or other key aspects of these classes of disorders in subsequent videos, and the group wiki for this module. I'll see you in other parts of the course. Thanks.